Blackwater founder Erik Prince has been accused of overseeing war crimes at his private security firm during the Iraq War, money laundering and violating U.S. sanctions, but he has never been charged with a crime. Now, the mercenary contractor is being accused of lying to Congress after a surprising interview on Al Jazeera last week. It's all because of this clip.
In November 2017, you told Congress under oath that you played, quote, no official or really unofficial role in the Trump campaign. What you didn't tell Congress is that on August 3rd, 2016, you were at a meeting during the campaign at Trump Tower with Don Jr., Trump's son, with Stephen Miller, then a campaign advisor to Trump, with George Nader, a former Blackwater colleague of yours who acts as a back channel to the Saudis, the Emiratis. He also happens to be a convicted pedophile. And also Joel Zamel, an Israeli expert on social media manipulation. How come you didn't mention that meeting to Congress, given it's so relevant to their investigation?
I did. As part of the investigations, I certainly disclosed any meetings. The very few I had.
Not in the congressional testimony you gave to the House. We went through it. You didn't mention anything about August 2016 meeting in Trump Tower. They specifically asked you what context you have, and you didn't answer that.
I don't believe I was asked that question.
You were asked were there any formal communications or contact with the campaign. You said apart from writing papers, putting up yard signs, no. That's what you said. I've got the transcript of the conversation here.
Sure. I mean, I might have been, I think I was at Trump headquarters or the campaign headquarters.
Trump Tower, August 3rd, 2016. You,
possible.
An Israeli dude, a back channel to the Emiratis and the Saudis, Don Jr., Stephen Miller.
We're there to talk about Iran policy.
Are you there to talk about Iran policy? Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's something important to disclose to the House Intelligence Committee while you're under oath?
I did.
You didn't. We just went through the testimony. There's no mention of the Trump Tower meeting in August 2016. Why not?
I don't know if they got the transcript wrong.
And after this interview, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Democrat Adam Schiff, pushed back against Prince's claim that the transcript of his testimony was wrong. He also raised the idea that special counsel Robert Mueller might be looking into these comments.
Is Mr. Prince telling the truth? Is your transcript wrong?
Well, he's certainly not telling the truth in that interview. There's nothing wrong with our transcript. There was nothing wrong with the reporter who transcribed his testimony. He did not disclose that meeting to our committee. Bob Mueller has that testimony already. And Bob Mueller will have to make the decision about whether that rises to the level of deliberate falsehood.
And joining me now is Mehdi Hasan, the journalist who interviewed Erik Prince. He's the host of Head to Head on Al Jazeera English and a senior contributor to The Intercept. Mehdi, thank you so much for being with us. So before we get to this so-called second Trump Tower meeting, please explain to our viewers who exactly Erik Prince is.
So Erik Prince is the founder, former CEO of one of the most notorious private security firms in the world, Blackwater, which hit the headlines during the Iraq War in relation to various massacres of Iraqis that took place, various alleged war crimes that took place in Iraq at the hands of Blackwater contractors. He later sold the firm but set up another one. He's also the brother of Betsy DeVos, the education secretary under Donald Trump, and a big donor to the Trump campaign. I think he spent something like $250,000 helping Donald Trump getting elected. And he's also a friend of Steve Bannon, who was Trump's first campaign manager. So he's part of Trump world, but he likes to pretend he's not, which is what I pressed him on during the interview, to talk about his ties to the Trump campaign, especially in the context of Russiagate and some of these secret meetings that were going on during the campaign and afterwards.
Well, fabulous interview. Fantastic to listen to. How did you get him to agree to it when ultimately, it didn't make him look so good?
It's the $64,000 question. It's the question I've been asked most since Friday. Why did he come on the show in front of an audience at the Oxford Union? I don't know. You'd have to ask Erik Prince. I assume he's been doing a lot of media recently to promote this new plan he has to try and privatize the US-led war in Afghanistan. He wants Donald Trump to allow him and an army of 6,000 mercenaries to take over from 30,000 NATO US troops. He thinks he can handle the Taliban better than the US military has done over the past 17 years. I assume he was coming on to try and hawk that plan, and we talk about that in the interview. It's an hour-long interview. But I also wanted to talk to him about these meetings because no one had really asked him about the contradictions between him having secret meetings with Don Jr., the son of Donald Trump, and Stephen Miller, campaign advisor in August 2016, but him telling Congress in 2017, I have no connections with the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
I never saw anyone from there.
So let's drill down into this meeting. Why is it significant that Prince attended this meeting, and why is it important that the topic at hand was Iran?
So It's very important because in August 2016, he is at a meeting with who? The son of Donald Trump, Don Jr., and Stephen Miller, neither of whom are foreign policy experts, security experts. Why are they having a secret meeting that wasn't released until the New York Times reported on it in May 2018, nearly 2 years later? Why are they having a secret meeting in Trump Tower during the campaign, 3 months out from the election, with this mercenary guy, with Joel Zamel, who runs an Israeli social media firm that the New Yorker just exposed as having spying on US students and academics, and with George Nader, this convicted paedophile who sells himself as an emissary, a back channel to the Emiratis and the Saudis. And we talk about Bob Mueller investigating the Trump campaign's ties to Russia. Well, Russia wasn't the only government that was interested in the result of the 2016 election. We know that countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE were very keen to see a Donald Trump presidency and not a Hillary Clinton presidency, primarily because they saw Trump as someone who would stand up to Iran, and we've seen that since Trump came to office. So if he's having these meetings about big subjects in Trump Tower in secret, and then he's asked about it under oath by Congress, what contacts did you have with the Trump campaign? He says, nothing, I put up a yard sign. I had no contacts with the campaign, and forgets to mention this meeting, and then tells me, oh, I did mention it to them, but they got the transcript wrong. What a weird defense that Adam Schiff, as you mentioned, has already shot down.
And what benefit would it be for him to somehow side with the Saudis in all of this?
Well, Prince has long-standing ties to the Emiratis. He has a home in the UAE. He's worked for MBZ, the Crown Prince of the UAE. George Nader, his former colleague at Blackwater, has pitched plans to destabilize Iran using private contractors. There's numerous reports out there about Erik Prince working with the Emiratis, training their security forces. So he would look like a useful conduit. And the Emiratis, this is what's been reported by ABC News and the Washington Post and others, the Emiratis are supposed to have set up this other meeting in the Seychelles in January 2017, 9 days before the inauguration, between a Russian oligarch close to Putin and Prince. And when I asked Prince about that, he said, oh, it was an accident. I just bumped into him. We just had a beer, halfway around the world in the Seychelles. No, the Emiratis saw it as a meeting between Trump's back channel guy, Prince, and Putin's back channel guy, Kirill Dmitriev. And that's what Mueller's been investigating and what Congress did ask him about. That's the meeting he mentioned to Congress. He didn't mention this other one in Trump Tower, and now it looks like he's in trouble because of that.
No doubt, when you connect those dots, it's a fascinating trail. Now, so, Mehdi, also in your article for The Intercept about the interview, you draw a comparison between Erik Prince and notorious mob boss Al Capone. Explain that for us.
So, as you mentioned in your introduction, Prince is accused of a lot of bad things over the years. I talked to him in the interview about the Nisour Square massacre in Iraq, in Baghdad, where 14 Iraqis were killed, innocent Iraqis were killed by Blackwater guards. One of those Blackwater guards finally went to prison in December 2018 for murder. Others have been charged with, convicted with manslaughter. He's been accused of, war crimes in Iraq. He's been accused of sanctions busting. He's been accused of illegal arms sales. He's never been charged with any of those crimes. Some of them he settled out of court. Some of them he paid fines. And so I thought it was ironic that now everyone's talking about him possibly going to jail for perjury, which I would argue is a bad thing to do, but it's not on the same level as war crimes. It would be ironic if Erik Prince, the notorious mercenary dude, ends up behind bars for lying to Congress, not for having overseen all sorts of crimes in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. And, Al Capone never went to prison for being a mob boss. He went there for tax evasion.
Indeed. And Mehdi, you also mentioned the focus on the first part of your interview on Prince's current business efforts to privatize the war in Afghanistan. What did he have to say when you pressed him about his plans?
So he thinks that he can do a better job than the US military, and he points to the failures of the US military, which I don't dispute. The war in Afghanistan has been a complete failure. It's now the longest war in US history. Now, some of us want to see an end to the war through negotiation and diplomacy. Erik Prince thinks the best way to end the war is to give him and 6,000 mercenaries a contract to go work with Afghan armed forces and take on the Taliban. The problem he has is that the Afghan government say, no way, we have no interest in you coming in and privatizing this war. When I asked him about that, he said, well, Hamid Karzai will get on board soon. And I said, well, I've spoken to Karzai, and Karzai says no, the former president. The current president, Ghani, says no. And Prince is like, well, we're just going to wait for a change in the Afghan presidency. The US government has said no way. Former Defense Secretary Mattis says this is a bad idea. But apparently, John Bolton might be interested, the National Security Advisor. So, let's see what happens next.
Mehdi Hasan, thank you so much for sharing your interview with us that may just prove to be Erik Prince's Achilles heel. We'll see. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.